Yo, 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 I'm Candy and I be knitting, and this week I be showing you all the things that I've been plying on my spinning wheel. And I have this bowl of yarn right here. We'll go in order from the most intentional to the least intentional. And so I finished this hunk. I've not weighed it yet. It started off as 8 ounces of yarn. And this is the Bowie base in the colorway Invincible from Hipstrings. I had 4 ounces of that, and their Bowie base is 37.5 BFL, 37.5 Shetland wool, and 25% Manx Lawton. And I also had a braid of Navajo Churro, and I've knitted a sweater in my Navajo Churro, and it is quite prickly. And so my idea to use the rest of the Navajo Churro was to blend it with a yarn or a fiber that I already had. What I just pulled out here is what they call a guard hair, which my Navajo Churro had quite a bit of, and it's just like a very straight, pokey bit of hair that is in the wool. And so my hope here is that the blending it with something else would kind of soften it up a little bit. It's still quite prickly. My idea here is to use it as a contrast color in the Ooey Gooey by Andrea Mowry. And so this would be the contrasting yoke color as well as the cuffs and the ribbing. And the way I did this, like I said, this was the Invincible colorway, which had kind of some soft, reddy, browny reds, the biggest bit of teal, and some navy blues, and then just a splash of the other week, or probably a couple months ago at this point, we had a really bright yellow moon, and my husband referred to it as a stinky yellow, and I have not been able to get that imagery out of my mind. So it had the stinkiest, funkiest, they call it in color work, the poison color, just this real funky yellow going through it. And what I did with this was I had the braid, and I broke up the braid from that red color, the lighter teal color, and that deep, deep navy blue. And then I blended each of those colors with the gray. And I started off thinking, oh, it might be more versatile to keep all the colors separate, even though they came out of the same braid. And that way I can use maybe the red in a project over here, the blue in a little project over here. So I spun this, by the way, I spun this on my drop spindle, and then I plied it on my wheel. And after I finished the red, and this is a bit of the red that has a little bit more of that funky yellow color in it, I started to ply the red, and I really wasn't feeling it that much. And then I decided, and then this is some of that navy blue color, that deep, deep navy blue here. And then I decided, let me take the 3 colors and actually make a 3-ply. And so what you see here is a 3-ply, and doing it this way got me just a little bit more. Yes, it's nice to have solids to, you know, use a solid over here, use a solid over there, but there's something to be said about blending or plying a bunch of colors that shouldn't go together. And it's from right here, you see like mostly the gray, but when you get closer, especially as I was plying it, there's just all these little just dimensions of color, which is very exciting, even though the overall effect is quite subtle. It's all about getting really up close and personal, and that can make for a really pleasing plying effect. So like I said, I plied this on I spun it on my drop spindle, applied it on my wheel. And what I did with this, which is different from what I've done before, when I first got my wheel, I did what they call all of the the wheel games. I tried to go as fast as I could, try to go as slow as I could, count treadles. I played with every single ratio, every single uptake, just to get a feel for what it's like to spin. And then for the most part, over the last 3 or 4 years that I've owned my wheel, I have just used it. I have an Asher Traditional, and I've just used it on the biggest ratio, the biggest whirl setting on my flyer. And if you don't know, if you don't spin, the bigger ratio you use, the bigger whirl that you use on the flyer, the less twist you get into your yarn, because it takes that many more treadles. I'm explaining this backwards, but basically the number of times the big wheel goes around in relationship to the amount of times the flyer goes around. And so when you increase the ratio, you can get more twist into your yarn, which results in more twist, less air in the yarn. Sometimes that, you know, that's how you get thinner yarns too, because you're able to get it that much more thin. I've just always used the biggest ratio because I'd rather adjust my body and learn my body, because I was trying to get the mechanics of spinning down and the hand-eye coordination of spinning down before I got too much in the math and changing up the wheel. All of that, saying to say this, I was watching Tazhi of Stitches and Starlight, and a YouTube channel, by the way, in case for some reason you're not watching Stitches and Starlight. And they were saying that they always go down a ratio when they ply. And I never thought of, I always think about ratios as in like what kind of finished yarn I want to get. So, okay, bigger ratio, I want thicker yarn, thinner ratio, I want thinner yarn. I never thought about changing the ratio for plying. And I have been trying to get better at plying over the years. I've noticed like what happens on the wheel is very different when the yarn is actually washed and finished. So it felt like, oh, this is over twisted or over plied, very, very tightly twisted. But then when I wash and finish it, my finished hand spun has been kind of splitty. And so I've been playing around with the ply angle, the twist angle. Also, the advice that I got was to slow down in my plying, and that has helped tremendously. But then I was like, oh, let me try playing with the ratio too. And so I went down just one ratio. So I think the Asher Traditional has 4 whirls, and I was in the biggest whirl. And so I went down to the next one. And I definitely see the difference. The issue that came up here, which I thought it might work better because on my drop spindle, I get a lot of twist in my drop spindle. And so to make a balanced yarn, the twist you put in to create the plies, you want to counteract that twist when you actually go to ply. And that's how you end up over or under plied. It's the relationship between the individual plies and the final yarn. And so you want to match that same tension. So I get a lot of twist in my drop spindle. I have, you know, just run-of-the-mill learner drop spindles, but they're rather heavy. And so, you know, I wanted to match that twist basically. So I went down a ratio. I can see how that works in theory. Here I can see that I do have some overplied areas. I've washed and finished this, and I have just some areas where it's a little over twisted, and you can tell that by how curly it is in certain places. And then it'll twist back on itself when it's not balanced. The issue here is because, remember I mentioned I was working with that Navajo Churro. The individual plies wanted to stick to each other before I even got them up to the uptake to ply them. And so the thing that I've used, and I've shown this before, is I use a top to a spice bottle. And so you would have spices in a bottle and you'd shake them out, and this keeps, you know, this measures out the spices for you. And I put my individual plies through here, and this helps not only control my twist angle, but also organize my plies. And also it helps me like be able to put my plies down and stop spinning without them tangling in themselves. And so I was using this, which helps a lot. But even with this, the fact that this yarn is so grippy, the plies were kind of twisting around each other and rubbing up against each other and wanting to cling to one another. And so I was having to go slower than I normally would and work my hands. And so what's happening is I'm still treadling, and so I'm creating twist, but my hands aren't moving fast enough to get the plies on the wheel. And so I did end up being overplied in some areas, but in principle, I do like the idea, but this wasn't the ideal yarn to try that on. I'm not upset with it because I have found that I prefer an over twisted yarn over an under twisted yarn. The downside is that the yarn can be a bit what they call ropey. It can feel like really compact and dense, and I'm not feeling that here. What I like about it is this, I just like the visual impact of the tightly twisted plies, and I don't mind a little bit of kinky and curly. I would rather it be kinky and curly than underplied and me splitting the yarn. So that is this. Like I said, my idea here is that this would be a contrast color in an Ooey Gooey by Andrea Mowry. My imagination told me that I would want, because most of the ones I see, the contrast color is a deeper, darker color than the main color, or reverse that. The contrast color is usually lighter, the main color is darker. What I want to do is have a dark main color and like maybe even a white or a light gray as my main color. I am currently spinning for a sweater for my husband right now, and it's like this really light gray that I'm doing. And so I was thinking, I was like, if I have leftovers of that fiber, or if I can blend more of that fiber, I think that would look good with this. My other thought is I have some good wool from Pearl Soho that's like a brown color, and so I could go low contrast. The big deciding factor here, I'm pretty sure I probably have enough yardage because I'm finding that color work does not take a lot of a contrast color, but she calls for a sport weight, but also the sport weight she calls for is dyed in the wool. I don't know why I have such a problem thinking of that yarn brand. Dyed in the wool, spin cycle, there we go. I know that yarn is labeled a sport weight, but there is some debate as to whether or not it looks thicker than a sport weight, just visually. But I never knit with it, so I don't know how it behaves. So I will, of course, I will gauge swatch with this. It calls for a size 4 needles, which I'm just like, size 4, sport weight, maybe. But that Pearl Soho good wool looks like a fingering weight, but I know that also behaves very differently. So long story short, I'm definitely going to swatch. My other thought, as far as contrasting colors go with this, is, where is it? April, does it have the date on here? The first weekend in April, I went to the Frontier Culture Museum in Staunton, Virginia, which is 2 hours west of me up in the Shenandoah Valley in the mountains. And they had their 2026 Wool Week Fiber Festival, which this is only their 3rd or 4th year doing this. In case you're not familiar, the Frontier Culture Museum is like an outside museum. It's like historical reenactments. And so, story of Virginia, they have African villages, they have Native American villages, and then they have European villages, and they tell the story of how Virginia came to be through historical reenactment, blacksmiths. They have a banjo player that creates like traditional African instruments. A lot of cool stuff. I took my kids there last fall, and then I started following them on social media because they have a wool festival, because as a part of their historical reenactment, they have sheep there, and they have people shepherding the sheep, take care of the sheep. And so this was the week that they were shearing all the sheep. So they had vendors there and sheepdog demonstrations, shearing demonstrations. I really wanted to see the shearing demonstration because they shear them with the actual scissors, you know, not electric, you know, it's historical reenactment. So they're wearing the historical gear and shearing the sheep. Long story short, I loved it. It was a good time. Like I said, it's about a 2-hour drive for me. So we actually spent more time in the car than we actually spent at the museum. And it is April here in Virginia, and we're having one of those Virginian springs where we're just going straight to summer. It feels like it's been 90 degrees Fahrenheit all week. And so I thought going up into the mountains, it would be a little bit cooler, but we were quite hot. My kids were not feeling walking around. That's not the festival's fault at all. I saw vendors I've never seen anywhere before. You know, I'm 2 hours away from me, so there are people from like West Virginia and stuff. So definitely recommend it if you're close to Staunton or if you're interested in driving out there. It's a really cute museum. The only thing right now, they're doing like construction. So I might wait a couple of years, and I also like to like rotate festivals I go to. So really cool. If you've never been, it's a pretty relatively new festival. But yeah, it was a good time. It was also free. It was like pay what you will to get into the museum. So you got to see the museum and see the fiber festival, and I got to see the sheep. I say all that to say this. I got a couple of fleeces, and one of the fleeces I think might work with that. This is Maurice, and this is a Morit, which if you don't know, it's, I didn't know this, it's actually an endangered sheep. And so I had to pick him up. It was actually just a woman there and her friend with the bag. And she was just like, I'm just trying to sell this one fleece because it's a rare fleece and I want someone to have it. But she didn't have like any kind of setup. And so this is one of his locks. And I've also never spun a male to my personal knowledge. All the fleeces I've bought have been identified as female, but I was thinking this might be a nice little low contrast. This is not washed, and I have it, I have a little soak going with it right now, and I can already tell it's gonna be a bit lighter than this, so it's probably not gonna be that low contrast, but very nice. And so this is why I drive 2 hours out of my way to go to a fiber festival, because you're just not gonna find, I can't go to the store around me, my local yarn store, and find stuff like this. I have to go to the festival. So yes, if you live anywhere close to Staunton, definitely check them out. This is like I said, this is like their 3rd or 4th year, and I was in line to get into the museum. It was actually quite a long line, and a guy was saying this is the biggest crowd he'd ever seen. So I'm guessing it's gonna get bigger and bigger. But it was also not as big as a Maryland sheep and wool or a Rhinebeck, and made a new friend named Maurice. So after I spun this, I had already, and that's the other thing the real reason I don't play around with the ratios on my wheel is because it takes a certain amount of time and effort to set up my wheel for spinning, especially if I have to move it from one place to the next. And so I'm just like, okay, I've already changed the ratio. I tried plying that. What else can I ply since I have it set to this ratio, and I would just have to change it back to start spinning my regular singles again. And so I finished that, and I had, when I split the braid, excuse me, the braid leaned heavy on the red. And so I had probably about 20-30 grams of the red left over, and I have this bin here is where I keep, when I spin, I have mix-ins for when I make bats, I have thread for thread plying, I have little bits of fleece that I've processed, and last but not least, this is where I keep all of my plies when I have just a little bit left over. You know, I have 10 grams here, 20 grams there. You know, I might do a center pull ball and do a 2-ply. I might do a plying bracelet or maybe chain ply it, but I don't always feel like doing that, and so I'll just dump it in here. And so I went to go dump that extra red that I had in here, and realized that this thing was getting kind of full. This is full now, but it was like overflowing and I couldn't get the lid on. And so I decided to pull all of my extra plies out and just go to town. And so I had some, I think, Into the World left over. And so this is, one ply is the red from Hipstrings, and then the other ply is a bunch of multicolored fiber samples. It was like a mixed bag of Into the World fiber, all different types of fiber. And so I did that. And then I, transitioning to a totally different fiber, I went to the Creative Reuse store, Scrap RBA, and someone had just donated a bobbin with a single on it. And I don't know if this person, my thoughts are either this person just quit spinning and just didn't want to deal with it anymore, or someone inherited someone's spinning and didn't want to deal with it anymore, because the bobbin had the single wrapped around it. And it was $10. And so it was a bobbin packed with a single and the wooden bobbin. It does not fit my spinning wheel, but I can use it for storage or I can give it to a friend. But it was $10, which if y'all know how much bobbins cost, that is a bargain, plus the wool that was attached to it, right? And so I got it home and I was like, okay, let me wind this single off of here. And the reason I think it was someone who just wanted to give up and didn't want to do it anymore is because it appears as if they could not find the end to the bobbin, and they had like cut into the single to try to get the single off of the bobbin and could not find the end. And so I had all these short bits that were coming off and I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? What have I gotten myself into? Eventually I found the bulk of the single and I created a ball on my, I caked up and just took one end and the other end and did a 2-ply and just quickly popped that on the wheel. This is much thicker than my default yarn. It's very fluffy. And so it really wouldn't be compatible with anything that I've spun. And so I just went ahead and plied it. It's quite nice. There was like some over twisted areas, but overall it's very nice, and it's not really my color. So it's cool to have something like this in my collection. And it's very squishy, very nice. I could see myself like knitting a hat for someone. It might go with some of I have like some older hand spun that's a little bit on the thicker side that it might be compatible with, but the colors are really pretty. And so I did that, and I told y'all I ended up with bits and pieces that were cut. And so what I did with that is I went digging and I actually had another bag of fiber that a friend gave me, and they had started to spin it, and their single was a bit thicker than my default single. So I went and I took the leftover green and the pink that a friend gave me, and I plied that up together, and I ended up with this smaller guy here. And this is just a nice little accent color. Like I said, don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I just was trying out this idea of changing my ratio to ply and playing around with that. Then I had a little bit of pink left over, and in my shoebox bin over there, I had just some brown, so some little pink and brown. And then by this point, I was just like, well, let me just try to get rid of all of these extra plies that I have in this shoebox and just finish this out, and then I'll reset my wheel and get it set up for the next spin. And so I had more of that Into the World, and then I had some other random bits, and then I think I had some, this is just all random stuff, but then the pink you're seeing is Green Goat Ranch. So it's 1 ply of Green Goat Ranch, all in pink, and then you're seeing the pops of color from all the little other bits that I had left over, just to match the length of the pink. Once the pink was done, then I was done. And then I still have a few more tiny balls of things. The other thing I use those tiny bits for are leaders on my spinning wheel, or if I just need a little bit of fiber to like felt something together. scraps, yarn, whatever. Or sometimes I'm plying and I just need a little bit more to finish out a ply. I might find a color that matches in there. And then last but not least, I had a few balls of, I have a Coopworth fleece that I spun up some for a sweater project I was working on. Didn't end up using it, but I had some left over and I was like, well, I have this whole Coopworth fleece. Maybe I should save the plies, and then when I finish spinning the Coopworth fleece, I can combine these plies with those plies. And then I was thinking to myself, I was like, what is the likelihood that by the time I get around to spinning the rest of that fleece, that my grist and my spinning style and my tension will all be the same? And so I was just like, let me just go ahead and spin this up, or ply this up rather. And I'm really pleased. I think this works well with that idea of going down a ratio, because the plies themselves were quite thick and loose. And then when I tightened up on the ratio to ply it, it just came out really I can't describe it, but it's like tightly plied. But because the individual plies were like plump and round, when I went to go finish it, it like has a nice halo to it. Like it all, like the plies twisted up tightly, and then it had like this like little pop that just came out, and this was really nice. The difference between how I finished this and I finished those, I put all of the colored ones in the same warm water bath and just left them there, and then just went around and snapped them. The smaller skeins, I just snap with my fingers. The bigger skeins, I put my whole arm in and snap them like this at probably like 1/8. I rotate them 1/8 at a time and snap them really good. And so that's why I finished these. And then I put this one in a separate bath because it has lanolin. It still has the lanolin in it, and I didn't want the lanolin to affect that. And I also, usually what I do is I wait for the water to completely cool before I take them out and finish them, whether it's snapping them or thwacking them. When it has lanolin in this, I take it out when the water's still warm, so the lanolin doesn't like congeal back into the yarn. And so that is this. So that is everything that I plied up in the past probably like week or so, and now I'm just going back to like my long-term spinning projects after this. And then I put them in literally the worst basket I could have put these in. So I'm gonna take these back out. And so that is these. What I should do is like reskein these after I wash them, but I don't always do that. So I've done it a few times for certain things, but that's this. Like I said, I went to that festival at the Culture Museum. It's pretty cool. My kids like it a lot. It just was a really warm day, and they are not as into the fiber stuff as I am. But I'm glad I went, and I got to, the only thing I wanted to see was the sheep shearing, and I got to see the sheep shearing, and then I got some cool stuff from a lot of cool vendors. And like literally there was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, about 20 vendors, and I've never heard of any of them before. And so it was pretty cool. And they were selling the fleece. The last thing I want to talk to you about is planning for my next maybe like hand spun project situation. And I don't like to do like haul videos where I just show you like everything that I bought. I like to show you stuff like as I'm thinking about it and as I use it. So just know that I bought stuff there. I showed you Maurice, and then unfortunately I don't remember who I bought this from, because one of the vendors, they were selling drop spindles, and then like you got to pick out fiber, and so they just had like this huge like bin of loose fiber, like millins, and they were just doing it by the weight. And so I saw this and I was like, oh, and my eyes lit up. And I have not, my family could not guess why my eyes lit up, but maybe y'all can guess. I'll give y'all a good 10 seconds to guess. My family was like, is it a flag? It has to be a flag of a country. I was like, no, it's not a flag. it's a flag of a country, but it's my very specific country. And that country is the country of hamburgers. I saw these colors and I immediately thought of hamburgers, and they were selling, I think this is 13 ounces, and they were like doing like $4 an ounce or something crazy like that. And they had this whole bag, they had like all kinds of loose fiber, but then they had that bag just sitting on itself. I guess the idea was that I could like break off little bits, but I took all of it because these are cheeseburger colors to me. And that week, first week in April, April Fool's Day, April 1st, not a great day to announce a pattern, but Pacific Knit Co., who does like the Doodle decks, which I've never gotten into because I've only just now gotten into color work, announced their burger doodle. And they offer, I don't know if it's, I'll double check, but they're offering it for free. And so I downloaded it immediately because I've never done the Doodle deck before. So it's an opportunity to use the Doodle deck. And it's, well, you can do whatever toppings you want. So you can do a hamburger or a cheeseburger. And that's literally my favorite food in the entire world. Everyone's, the big trend for a long time has been those halibut sweaters with the fish on them. And I think it's such a cool look and it's so clever. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had like a quirky, fun sweater that I could make. But I can't imagine spending a lot of time knitting a fish sweater when I'm not a fisher person. Fish is okay for me. It doesn't have any significance in my life, so it just seems like a lot of work to just be like, I got fish on my sweater. And so I was just like thinking to myself, like, it'd be so cool if there was something of some significance that I could make in a big color work way, and people would immediately identify and be like, oh, that's so you know? And Pacific Knit Co. heard my cries and created the burger. And so I'm kind of on, well, I have to see everything because she's got a lot of toppings here. She's got, this whole thing is like 13 pages, and it's got like graph paper in it. It's got a coloring worksheet. You can draw out your pattern. So I have to figure out what I want my toppings to be, because I'm kind of I love, I was watching this reel the other day, and someone was saying how like annoying foodies are and how pretentious foodies are. And one of their qualms was people who like really simple food, and then they have to like explain it to you. But I'm a burger purist and I am a burger snob. And so I'm very much like off the grill, a little bit of ketchup, maybe some mustard. If it's got 11 toppings, it's usually covering up something that's lacking in the patty. Yeah, I'm just gonna put it out there. A good burger doesn't need a whole bunch of toppings. So she's got like avocado. I'm definitely mixing the avocado. I'm debating on the bacon. I'm definitely want to do the pickles because I think the green is gonna pop in a fun way. And so it's got, and I think I'm going to do 2 lines of the ketchup and mustard. I want to figure out how to do more ketchup and mustard in there because I think that's really cool to have the waves. And so you've got kind of a light brown patty with maybe the sesame seeds. You got red ketchup, yellow mustard. The tomatoes are 2-tone, so I need kind of a deeper red for part of the tomato. Not necessarily a pink for the inside of the tomato, but like a, I don't know. I gotta figure all this out, but I think at least the green inside of the pickle, outside of the pickle, a little bit of lettuce in there, definitely ketchup and mustard in here. This yellow actually might be good for cheese, and then use a brighter yellow for the mustard because I'm not a fancy mustard, you know, just a little Heinz. It doesn't take a whole lot. It's all in just the cook of the meat, and that's all. I'll just leave it there. Brown is definitely a good brown for the patty. And that's that. I also have this bin of all of my scraps of Knit Picks palette, which is a great, just simple, solid yarn. And so I have to see what colors I have in here that could be, because you don't need a lot for color work, especially when you're talking about like a few pickles. And this is the Cowl version. But I'm thinking if I finish the Cowl, I definitely want to figure out how to put this on a sweater. I just have to figure out where and how to put increases in there. So yeah, it's just gonna be a matter of time. The other thing I need to think about is the background color. If anyone else is doing this, I would love to know what you think about your background color. Obviously you could do white, black, gray, like the neutrals. But I'm also annoying. So I'm just like, I want to figure out how to put like a really like punchy background color too, but there's already a lot of colors in here. And you know, you think burger, you think fast food, you think reds and yellows, but the reds and yellows are already in the ketchup. So I'm like, the only colors I can think that wouldn't get muddy are blues and purples. And I'm just like, blue and purple in a burger, I don't know. So let me know. And let me know, like, maybe we do. I've never done a knit along before, but like I don't want to necessarily want to do like a knit along with like prizes and time and hashtags, but like a little like, hey, do you like burgers? You want to do burgers? I like burgers too. Let's talk about our burgers together kind of thing. And you know, if I'm knitting it, you want to knit it too, or if you want to spin for it. Hashtag burger spin. I don't know. I'm just really excited about this. I am unreasonably excited about this. So I'm just gonna leave it there. If you like burgers, tell me what you like what would you put on your burger? Would you put the bacon on there? I'm debating. I think it's gonna come down to what colors I have. That's gonna be probably the most important thing, is what colors I have and what can I convincingly portray in the colors that I have. Because between the red of the tomato, then bacon is portrayed as red in the cartoon fashion. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about the burger, but let me know, what do you like on your burger? There we go. Let's leave it there. If you like this video, hype this video. If anyone knows what that means, please explain it to me. The other day I was watching Karcher Makes. Hi, Karcher. And I was just like, I keep saying this thing, hype. You have so and so many points, and I thought it was like had to do with like membership, so I thought it like cost money. And I was just like, let me just play with this. And so I just pushed hype on her video, and then it was like, oh, you just hyped this. And I was like, what is that? Like confetti came out of my screen. So if you like this video, hype this, give me points for what, I don't know. You can follow me on Instagram at Rulu. No, I'm candibknittin at Instagram now. I'm also candibknittin on Ravelry. I'm also candibknittin at gmail.com. Share, subscribe. What else can you do? You can hit the bell for notifications. You can, dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. Until next time, peace.